This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy, we go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
Okay, let's unpack this. We've been immersed in a collection of source material we're calling the National Emergency Briefing.
And that title, it sounds intense for a reason.
It really does. The content backs it up. This is incredibly serious stuff, detailing systemic risks from nature loss, climate change, geopolitical instability.
All with a sharp focus on what this means for you, right here.
But here's the thing. Our mission in this deep dive isn't to just wallow in the difficult news. It's to find the functional, immediate blueprint for action that's hidden in here.
Precisely. Our mission today is defined by facing reality. We're deep in what the sources call an escalating polycrisis.
A polycrisis?
Yeah, a confluence of challenges, nature, climate, security, the economy, that all feed into one another. The briefing reminds us that, nothing can truly be changed until it is faced.
So you can't treat them in silos?
You can't. If you try to fix the economy without nature or climate without security, you fail before you even start. We have to see the interconnectedness to unlock the kind of full-scale action we need.
So our goal for you is clarity. We're going to distill concise, evidence-based insights on what is happening, what needs to happen, and, crucially, how we can get things moving, especially in a world that's just flooded with misinformation.
We're cutting through the noise.
And to start, we have to look at the very foundation of our resilience, which, according to this briefing, is the natural world.
It's the essential infrastructure. It underpins everything else. The first major revelation here is that nature isn't an amenity. It's not a luxury.
Oh.
It's critical national infrastructure. It's just as vital as our energy grid or our transport networks.
And the state of that infrastructure is? It's shocking. The UK is one of the most nature-depleted nations on Earth.
That's right.
When you look at the Biodiversity Intactness Index, we rank in the bottom 10% worldwide, with only about half of our original biodiversity left. Half.
And that isn't just a sad statistic for environmentalists. It's a failure of resilience planning. And what's fascinating here is how that depletion translates directly into tangible, immediate risks for you.
Okay, like what?
Take water health. Only 14% of rivers in England are considered to be in good ecological health.
14%.
They're choked by chemical pollution, by sewage, agricultural runoff.
And when a system is that degraded, it just loses its shock absorbers. That directly reduces our resilience.
Exactly. You have less capacity to absorb heavy rain, so floods get worse. And in the summer,
you have less natural storage, so droughts get worse.
It's a double whammy, all created by poor stewardship. And it's not just our rivers, it's our land systems, too. Most UK peatlands are now degraded.
And these areas should be these incredible long-term carbon stores.
They should be phenomenal. But instead, they're emitting millions of tons of CO2 every year. That's carbon we should be pulling out of the atmosphere and now being added back in.
And of course, that degradation increases the risk of wildfires, which is a new and frankly terrifying threat for communities across the UK.
And then there's the direct economic hit. Soil degradation alone costs England and Wales around £1 billion every year.
That's money that just vanishes.
It's gone because we're not treating the soil as an asset. But that's where the opportunities emerge. The economic case for restoration it's overwhelming.
How so?
Well, restored wetlands and floodplains offer incredibly effective natural defenses against flooding. And we're talking about a risk that currently faces over 5 million properties.
And they have a much higher benefit-to-cost ratio than just building a concrete wall?
So much higher. They're cheaper, and they provide all these other co-benefits.
We also have to consider the human cost. The loss of urban trees, of green spaces, leaves our cities dangerously exposed to extreme heat.
We all remember the 40-degree heat event in 2022.
Nearly 3,000 people in England died from heat-related causes that year. Those are often preventable deaths.
And this brings up the core policy question. How do we shift from extraction to regeneration? The central task is to reform the underlying economic rules.
So nature has to be consistently valued in our national resilience planning right next to transport and energy.
Yes, by properly valuing the avoided costs. That means putting a value on the flood you prevented or on the lives you saved by avoiding heat deaths. We have to stop subsidizing the activities that degrade the very systems we depend on.
It's clear the natural economy is failing. But when we zoom out to the global climate system, the figures look even more challenging.
They do. Moving to the climate emergency, the numbers on the velocity of change are just stark.
CO2 concentrations are rising at unprecedented rates. We've jumped from about 280 parts per million, that's ppm in 1850, to 424 ppm today.
And the hard truth, which the briefing insists we face, is that if we don't eliminate fossil fuels, temperatures will just keep rising.
The current path leads to 2 degrees Celsius by mid-century.
And that carries a very real risk of hitting 4 degrees by the end of the century, which would lead to, well, to systemic collapse.
So the scientific reality is defined by the global carbon budget. That's the total amount of CO2 we can still emit.
Right, before we hit certain temperature targets. And the budget for 1.5 degrees it's tiny. It represents only about 3 to 13 years of current global emissions.
So if we were to reduce emissions in a straight line, we'd have to hit zero by about 2030.
Which means the political debate is dramatically behind the physical reality. Many scientists now believe 1.5 degrees is no longer a viable target.
So what does that mean practically?
It means the focus has to shift. We have to radically reduce the overshoot and prepare for 2-degree impacts while fighting like hell to stay below that.
And that brings us back to fairness.
Yeah.
If we shift to the 2-degree target and apply principles of equity.
Which the UK committed to.
Right. Recognizing our historical emissions. The UK's equitable share is only about 2 to 2.5 billion tons of CO2.
Which is roughly 7 years of our current emissions.
7 years.
Staying within that ethical budget means 13% annual reductions, reaching zero by 2039.
And when you compare that necessary 13% cut to what we've actually done, the gap is massive.
It is. If you include emissions from aviation, shipping, all the goods we import, the UK's overall emissions reduction since 1990 is only about 20%.
An average of 0.6% a year. It's a clear failure of climate leadership in the global north.
And adding insult to injury, the briefing is really strong on what it calls false solutions.
These are the technologies promised by the oil and gas industry to delay real action. Let's talk about carbon capture and storage, CCS.
Yes. The idea of capturing CO2 at the source and burying it. After 30 years of promises, CCS has stored less than 0.03% of all fossil fuel emissions.
It's just not scaling.
Not at all. And yet this is the technology that underpins things like new gas power stations with CCS, blue hydrogen.
Which is hydrogen from fossil gas with the promise of capturing the CO2.
Exactly. These are all expensive, they're unproven at scale, and they're designed to maintain the status quo.
So what are the timely solutions?
A Marshall Plan-style deployment of proven technology, retrofitting homes, rapid public transport rollout, and wholesale electrification.
But we have to remember, electricity is only 18% of UK energy consumption.
Right, so the profound shift has to happen in that other 82%. The gas we use for heating, the petrol for our cars, for industry.
And that requires systemic social norm shifts.
Particularly focusing on high-income, high-emitting people who use nearly 5 times more energy than the lowest-income households.
This isn't just about morals, it's about efficiency. The briefing calls for urgent legislation to drive down demand and shift resources from, what does it say, private luxury to public well-being.
Now, shifting to the immediate impacts, this crisis isn't some future model, it's today. We're seeing devastating events like the European megafloods, Storm Daniel.
These aren't warnings anymore.
No, they're today's crisis hitting our allies. And we've seen significant shifts right here. UK winter rainfall has increased by 10% since 1980.
And the sources note that this trend is already 25 years ahead of what the models projected.
And, of course, that extreme 40-degree heat event in 2022, around 3,000 excess deaths.
So let's dig into the physics of that, because the mechanism connecting Arctic ice melt to our weather here, that's the real aha moment in this briefing.
It's the blocked jet stream phenomenon.
Right. So the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average. How does that affect us?
That warming weakens the temperature gradient that powers the jet stream, that fast-flowing river of air high up in the atmosphere.
The one that keeps our weather moving.
Yes. When that gradient weakens, the jet stream gets slower and, well, wavier.
And when it stalls.
When it stalls, you get persistent, catastrophic events. A weather system just gets stuck over you. That leads to long heat waves, huge wildfires, or these slow-moving storms that cause mega floods.
But the critical risk for the UK, the one that honestly makes every other issue seem manageable, is the AMOC.
The Atlantic Meridional Overturning circulation. The briefing defines this as a crucial climate tipping point.
And for our listeners, what exactly is a climate tipping point?
It's an abrupt, self-propelling, and almost impossible to reverse change in a major part of the climate system.
And the AMOC is this huge system of ocean currents.
That transports tropical heat north. It acts like a giant radiator that keeps the UK and Western Europe mild. Without it, our climate would be completely different.
And the briefing warns that AMOC is weakening. The risk of it tipping increases markedly if we go past 1.5 degrees. The catastrophe that follows it's almost unimaginable.
If the AMOC tips, the consequences are profound. Models show London could see temperatures drop to -20 Celsius with 3 frozen months.
Edinburgh could see -30 with 5 frozen months.
And while summers might still be hot, that radical seasonality would completely eliminate our ability to grow major crops in the UK.
We would become nearly 100% dependent on imports for food. And it would trigger a massive water security crisis in the southeast.
It is. That scenario alone justifies everything we've talked about. It completely redefines national emergency.
The only way out is a radical acceleration of action towards zero emissions. We need to activate what the briefing calls positive tipping points.
Right. These are self-accelerating, beneficial changes in technology and behavior. A feedback loop in the right direction.
Like the UK's phase out of coal.
Exactly. It went from 40% of our electricity in 2012 to near zero today. And that was activated by policy mandates, like the carbon floor price.
So mandates are the most effective lever. Things like phasing out the sale of new fossil fuel cars.
Yes. Those mandates destabilize the old system and make clean technologies cheaper, better, and faster to deploy.
Shifting to the societal impacts, we have to talk about food security. The era of reliable harvests is over.
The briefing warns that at just 1.5 degrees of warming, a major corn harvest failure could happen once every 3 years. The system is getting brittle.
And the UK is highly vulnerable because we import 40 to 50% of our food. A quarter of that comes from the Mediterranean, which is facing desertification.
And that price shock isn't abstract. It translates directly to political instability. About a third of the food price inflation in 2023 was driven by extreme weather.
The good news here, though, is the food transformation opportunity. It offers enormous win-wins.
It's not about everyone going vegan tomorrow, but about a shift to genuinely plant-rich diets, like a red meat burger once every 2 weeks.
And doing just that reduces agricultural emissions by 60%.
But here's the massive gain. It spares an area the size of Scotland for nature recovery and carbon storage. It could increase our self-sufficiency in crops and boost farmer livelihoods. It's a win-win-win.
And when we talk about health, it's now about survival. The greatest threat isn't climate illness directly, but the socioeconomic fallout.
The source material is clear. Without a functioning economy or a reliable food supply, you can't run a health service. It's that fundamental.
And the economic hazard is already here. Actuaries warn that global economic losses from climate change are already around $4,500 per second.
The global economy is already committed to losing 20% within 2 decades, with warnings of a 50% loss later this century. This isn't fringe stuff. This is the insurance industry speaking.
This uncertainty feeds directly into national security. It's a threat multiplier. Climate shocks fuel global instability.
We saw drought-driven agricultural collapse precede the Syrian civil war. Resource competition over water in places like the Nile creates new flashpoints.
And this extends to homeland stability. The biggest domestic concern is cascading crises.
Floods, power outages, food shortages, all hitting at once. That risks overwhelming government systems, potentially leading to an ungovernable state.
But the solutions? Energy independence, resilient infrastructure, these are measures that make Britain safer.
They do. Which pivots us back to the economics of opportunity. The briefing is crystal clear. The current market rules are dangerous. They assume a stable climate that no longer exists.
They reward businesses that profit from putting the country at risk.
And they penalize those who invest in reducing their footprint. So government has to step in and change the rules. We have to debunk the argument that we can't afford net zero.
So the UK investment required is only about £4 billion a year. That's 0.2% of GDP. How do we counter the pushback that any spending is too much right now?
You counter it with the economics of delay. Delaying increases costs exponentially. The briefing cites studies showing a fast global transition saves $12 trillion compared to a slow one. It's an investment.
And the other argument, The UK can't solve it alone.
That's just tired. Global action is accelerating. Solar installations are 15 times faster than projected in 2015. UK leadership increases our chance of becoming a high-value producer in the green economy.
The energy price crisis is Exhibit A for why the old system is failing. Dependency on fossil fuels is responsible for roughly half of the UK's recessions since 1970.
And the recent gas spike forced the government to spend £64 billion more than the annual defense budget to support households.
12 million households now struggling with bills.
Meanwhile, the renewables advantage is undeniable. The input sun, wind, it's free forever. Offshore wind costs are down 50% in 10 years. Plus, the whole fossil fuel system is fundamentally inefficient. It wastes 2/3 of the raw energy it produces.
Electrification is just vastly more efficient.
So ultimately, the affordability of this is a political choice. Who pays and who benefits?
The briefing identifies 3 immediate policy solutions.
First, use national banks or wealth funds to lower the cost of capital for these big infrastructure projects. Second, break the link between cheap renewable prices and expensive gas prices.
And the third, which is the fastest way to bring down bills, is a massive nationwide program to insulate the UK's drafty homes.
That investment stops energy waste dead and gives immediate relief to families.
So what does this all mean? We've laid out these certain catastrophic hazards, from an AOC tipping point to an ungovernable state, but the action required isn't radical, it's necessary.
Exactly. The solutions, plant-rich diets, restored land, resilient energy grids, they're a profound triple win for health, for the economy, and for security.
They make us stronger, safer, and richer.
And we have to re-emphasize the profound nature of this choice. The transformation needed involves fundamental changes to our values, our economic systems, our power relationships.
The choice is between an organized-ish technical and social revolution.
Which means deep, rapid, fair decarbonization, or a chaotic and violent revolution driven by escalating climate impacts.
The greatest obstacle, according to the sources, is a lack of clarity and imagination to conceive that it will be different. We have to prioritize public well-being over private luxury.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. The shift is happening, either through planned action or chaotic disaster. We have to focus on how we can efficiently improve people's lives using these solutions. So what small part of your life, your sphere of influence, can you begin to imagine differently today to help tip the system toward that organized revolution?
Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other podcasts, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.